Welcome everyone to this new session about automated security with Azure Security Center. I'm Fernanda Bella. I'm presenting here with Tom. We work in the same team in Microsoft Azure Security Center. We're program managers in the product team. And welcome everyone. Here's a poll for everyone to access. Just please do it now. And let's start with it.
Yeah, we basically would love to see where you are joining us from today. And we're going to have some more questions throughout this session. So it would be great to get some interaction here and for you to also interact in that poll. I'm seeing some answers coming in already. Not sure if we can see them on the slide yet, but maybe it's not updating. So maybe we can just go ahead with the agenda, and then afterwards, if we're gonna have other polls, you can still send your answers, and if you do not see them on screen, we can see them in the back end, so we can still refer to them then.
Perfect. So the agenda for today is that we are going to have an overview of Security Center, which is a CSPM and also a CWPP. So this is a cloud solutions protection management platform and Cloud Workload Protection platform. We're also going to take a look at REST APIs, continuous export and workflow automation, Workbooks, Logic Apps, and a few demonstrations of how these features work in Azure Security Center, how you can use them, and So I'm going to, should I skip also this, Tom? Or should we start waiting for a few answers?
So if it's not updating, then I think we can skip it. But I don't see answers in the backend yet, so maybe there will be answers coming in. But yeah, maybe just go ahead.
Perfect.
Cool.
So yes. So Azure Security Center, what is it, right? We have heard so many times about putting here a high security posture in your environment, in the enterprise that you are working, because we know that there are so many vulnerabilities going on. There are so many threat actors happening. And so what is Azure Security Center? So Azure Security Center is going to help you actually to strengthen your cloud security posture management. And this is by using some features as Secure Score that we can see here on the screen, policies and compliance, to help you find and fix vulnerabilities. And so here, I just want to touch a very important key to success for the hybrid workloads, which is that whether they are in Azure, on premises, or in any other type of cloud, you have to secure them fast. And this has to go before the attackers can get to those workloads and probably do damage. So here, Security Center is going to actually help you getting secure faster with two primary functions, which is attack prevention and attack detection. So let's take a look at what attack prevention looks like, which is strengthen your security posture. So, for example, Security Center is going to continuously discover new resources that are being deployed across your workloads. And it is going to assess whether they are configured according to security best practices, and we are basing these in the Azure Security Benchmark, which is the Microsoft authored and Azure specific set of guidelines of security and compliance's best practices. This is a very important framework that we use. And so Security Center is going to actually analyze the security state of your resources to actually identify potential vulnerabilities, just as we just said before. And here you can use, for example, Secure Score as a KPI, which is a key performance indicator. But like, how does that work, right? What is that? Well, this percentage that we can see here on the screen is calculated based on your recommendations under these controls that we're showing here. And so what is a control, right? So a control is a set of security recommendations with instructions that help you implement remediations. So for example, here we have the security control remediate vulnerabilities that has many recommendations that fit under this category. We have here the maximum score that we can achieve, our current score, the potential score increase if we start tackling all of those recommendations and actually repairing, right, the resources that are being assessed here. We can see also the unhealthy resources that are recommended to actually implement the recommendation, the resource kill, and a few actions, right? Sometimes we have quick fix buttons that actually do the entire logic. And so we only have to go there, just click quick fix this and solve it out, just to have it already here solved. And so your secure score, and this is also very important, your secure score only is going to improve when you solve all of the recommendations within a control. So if I want to achieve the maximum score of a certain control, I will have to do all of this in order to have this value in my secure score. So that is like the main key features of secure score and recommendations. And as we just said, you can use Security Center Secure Score as your security KPI. And ASE is going to continually, like we said, assess your resources for security issues, and all of the findings are going to be the recommendations that will go into the secure score, and is going to be represented as a score, right? So at the end, this can help you actually track your security efforts and projects in your organization over time, because when you start, for example, here in September, you start with a 57%. And then you start remediating certain recommendations that go along with the instructions that you have in your enterprise, in your environment. So you start seeing some progress, right? So maybe you're going to start increasing your secure score by October and November. And so whenever secure score goes up, you have two things that are going to start happening. Your security posture is going to be enhanced. Because, of course, we all want to have that 100% of secure score, right? Where all of the security recommendations are remediated. Also, when you start seeing that enhancement, then the security recommendations will drop, right? Because you're already taking action into those. Now, let's face it, keeping your secure score at its highest level by following recommendations may look a little bit scary whenever you have like a complex environment, and also when you have like a hybrid environment that is rapidly growing, right? And why is this, right? It is because it introduces administration and compliance challenges. And how can you enforce and achieve compliance across your subscription in an efficient and automated way, which is the main topic of this conversation. And well, this is when governance comes very, very handy in these type of scenarios. And so it is very challenging to strike like an effective balance between speed and control within cloud adoption. And without governance, each time, for example, that you are going to start deploying new virtual machines, storage accounts, SQL servers, whatever type of resource that you're providing in the cloud, your secure score will drop, right? Because sometimes you're not implementing policies that actually say, okay, whenever you're deploying this new server, have these ports disabled, only allow it to have this networking environment and have all of these patches, right? So there are many built-in features in Azure that help you achieve governance. And you have Azure policies, blueprints, management groups, role-based access controls, and many, many others. Also, you can have some of the automations that also we're going to present that can help you that each time that a new recommendation pops up, then you can trigger an automation so that this gets remediated. And so you're not risking too much there. So up to now, we have seen how to reduce like the attack surface by addressing security recommendations and using Azure Security Center, which is part of an overall improvement of your security hygiene, right? However, and this is very important, protection is just one of the pillars of security posture. You also need to boost your threat detection and response. So here is where Azure Security Center also comes very handy, because this is for servers, cloud-native workloads, databases, and storage. So let's take a dip here. And Azure Security Center is going to use advanced security analytics, of course, and machine learning technologies to evaluate some events and correlate alerts across your entire cloud infrastructure that may have servers, storage accounts, and other types of resources that you can enable here for protection with Azure Security Center, which is called Azure Defender for servers, for storage, for SQL, and all of those. And some of the capabilities that AEC provides as a cloud workload protection platform is, for example, the detection and block of advanced malware and threats for servers, threat detection across IaaS and PaaS services, protection of data services. And well, you have a lot of cool things going on here with security alerts. And for example, you're going to have this display that is going to show you the severity of each of your alerts, the alert title, the resource that is being affected. And also here you can see, like, in the first plane, when did it start and the MITRE attack, right? And if it's in an active state or is just dismissed. You can also do like suppression rules to say, no, I think that this is some test that is going on in my environment. Okay, so we're not going to take that into consideration. But this is, for example, like the overall spectrum of the security alerts that you're going to have in Security Center. Now, once you go inside of one of these security alerts, you're going to have certain things that are very important. And each alert is very unique and they have different entities, right? But the thing is that alerts are going to include certain information that is going to describe, for example, what happened, when happened, which process happened, and where did it happen. So here, for example, we have that a failed SSH brute force attack happened. We know that the status is active. We know the activity time, the severity. We have the description, resources affected. And also here we can see in what status of the meter attack tactics it is. So here in this example, we have that it is a pre-attack. In the alerts details, we can see the number of failed authentication attempts. We can see related entities, which is amazing because we can see these resources that are actually connected. And yeah, we can see the host IPs, and we can take action into this. Now, when we go into take action, we can actually do and trigger a logic app and do automations. So, for example, whenever these type of situations happen, we can create a logic app that is going to isolate, for example, the server so that the brute force attack is not going to affect the machine anymore, right? So you can take a few automation processes to actually have a better ecosystem here based on the alerts that are going to be thrown at you at any time, because that is what happens, right? So yes. And I think, yeah.
Okay, so now that you've learned about all the features and the data that Azure Security Center is generating, let's take a deeper look at how we are exposing all that data. Because it's not only enough to have that type of information in Azure Portal. A lot of customers really want to get hold of that data and to work with own automations around that. And one of the good things here is that we're exposing all of the information into our REST APIs. And we have quite a lot of REST API reference endpoints here. For example, in Azure Security Center, you can use the Secure Score API to retrieve information of the Secure Score in your current subscription. You can get information about the assessments, but also about the security alerts that Fernanda just referenced. But also, it's not only about Security Center and the REST APIs in here. You can also use Azure Resource Graph, in which we are exposing some information, as well as Log Analytics, in which you can also get information about your alerts, Secure Score assessment results, and so on and so forth. Now, when we take a look at the RESTful APIs that we are using, then basically what I just said before is that we are providing a lot of API endpoints here. And you can find the REST API endpoints in our API reference. For example, we have that for the alerts, for assessments, for compliance results, but also for settings. We have a settings API that you can use, for example, to enable or disable the integration of Azure Defender for servers with Microsoft Defender for endpoint. The same is true for the Microsoft Security Graph, which is a consolidated API for security products across the Microsoft ecosystem, which includes alerts that we are generating in Azure Defender that are then stored in the Microsoft Security Graph API. And then there is the Azure Resource Graph, in which we are storing information about security resources, which includes assessment results for unhealthy virtual machines, for example. So you have quite a lot of information that you can retrieve from basically any type of backend service that we're providing here. And again, if we then take a deeper look at how the APIs work, then usually you have type of a managed identity, a service account, which is called an application that is registered in Azure Active Directory. That application or managed identity will get RBAC permissions assigned to its identity, so it is able to pull information, for example, from a subscription. So if that application will have the security reader access role, then it will be able to get all the information about security, or basically about Azure Security Center, in a particular subscription. Then using an authentication token, you are able to send a request against the API endpoint. That can be a GET request to retrieve information, but also a PUT request if you want to update something. Or, and you will see that later in the live demo, there is an API endpoint for the Azure Resource Graph. So you can also send a KQL query against the Azure Resource Graph API and then retrieve information that is stored by Azure Security Center. And then at the end, you will get a response. You can use that information, for example, to integrate with third-party applications, such as a third-party SIEM solution. So you're able to retrieve the information directly from, as I said, the Security Graph API or from our own REST API endpoints. But you can also run scheduled automations or triggered automations. The button that you have seen before in Fernanda's demo is exactly the triggered automation. So you can manually trigger a logic app based on information that we are sending to the logic app, and then the logic app will get all the information of the alert, work with that information, and do something. And I've prepared a logic app for that for a later demo as well, because that is not only using API endpoints, but also some other capabilities that we're going to cover within a few minutes. Now, that is Postman, which is a tool that I'm going to use now for showing you how to easily retrieve information from our REST APIs. And also for that, there is an Azure REST API reference documentation that will explain in a small video how to use Postman in order to retrieve information from any REST API endpoint that Azure is providing. With that being said, let's switch over to Postman and take a little demo. I've prepared a GET request against the Microsoft.Security Alerts API endpoint. And if we just send that GET request now, we will get some information here. And as you can see, let me just make that a little bit larger. Here we go. As you can see here, there's quite a lot of information that is part of one alert. In this case, that is a simulated alert that we have created in my subscription. But as you can see, there is information about the compromised identity. There is the alert display name and a description. So what is that alert actually? Then remediation steps and some extended properties. And now the thing with extended properties is that each and every alert might have or might not have extended properties to its information. However, everything that you will see for this particular alert here is exactly the same information as you are presented with in the Azure portal. So if you have an alert that is popping up in the alert dashboard, you will see the same information if you retrieve it from the REST API endpoint. Also, there's an alert URI. If you click that, you're immediately redirected to a deep link in the Azure portal directly to that particular alert. Now, we also have a Secure Score API. And with the Secure Score API, you will get the information about the secure score in your particular subscription. In this case, I have a secure score of 22.92%, which is not good. And no, that's not true. It is not percent, it is points. So it's about 23 points out of 56 points that I can get. And that is a percentage value of 40.93%. So using that information, you can pull the current secure score for each subscription or even for your management groups, and you can store that anywhere you want, do with that data whatever you want. So you are able to just export that information using the APIs. And then we have the assessments API, including the new values for the status evaluation dates that we call time indicators. So every assessment result is basically what you see as a recommendation in Azure Security Center. In this case, it is the recommendation that Service Principal should be used to protect your subscriptions instead of managed certificates. The status of my subscription is healthy, and the assessment status changed its state on the 6th of June for the last time. With that information, you can basically also build automations around first evaluation date and status change date, because if you know that first evaluation date is the first time that that recommendation for a particular resource appeared, and the status change date is later, then you know, or is the same, then you know how long the status has not changed. So, for example, if that is an unhealthy resource, then you can go to your resource owners, and you can basically also do that within the scope of a DevOps project, and tell the resource owners, hey, you have created a resource which has been unhealthy for, let's say, 4 weeks. please make sure to remediate that unhealthy resource now in order to improve your security posture. Now, another capability that we also have is to use PowerShell and Azure CLI to retrieve basically the same information. There is a module which is called az.security. And the AZ Security module will contain all the Azure Security Center PowerShell commandlets. So for example, you can run the command get AZ Security Alert, where the alert type is like brute, and you will get all the information about brute force attack alerts in your particular subscription. In this case, let me just see that here. Let me pull that. In this case, you see that even today, there has been a brute force attack against my Linux victim, which in fact was a successful brute force attack. I'll come to that back a little bit later, because that is an alert that I have generated today by successfully brute forcing one of my servers. And I've done that to show you what you can do to automatically react on that particular type of an alert. And with that being said, giving it back to you, Fernanda.
Cool, thank you. So now let's talk a little bit about continuous export. And so continuous export is a feature that is going to allow you to export data types whenever they change. And these data types are like security alerts, security recommendations. Here you can also find security findings or sub-recommendations that are annotated in one recommendation. You can also pull the secure score and also regulatory compliance. Here is very important to know that you can also export frequency, right? You can have like a streaming, which is near real time when a resource health state is being updated. And also you can have snapshots. And a snapshot is a shot of the current state of the support types that will be sent every week. Here in the configuration, you can do you can actually do it to send it to Event Hub or to a log analytics workspace, and from there you can actually connect third-party tools to actually retrieve this information that is going to be hosted in this Event Hub or in this log analytics workspace, and actually work with that information, right? This is just another option. Instead of using, for example, APIs, you can actually store this information into Event Hub or a log analytics workspace and have it from there. Now, let's talk a little bit about workbooks, which is another feature that Azure Security Center has. And so I like to say it or introduce it as a canvas for infinite possibilities. And this is because it is where you can actually have data analysis or reporting, and you can have these rich and interactive visuals that we're going to take a look. So some of the key aspects of Azure workbooks is that they're interactive. They are portable, and you can have multiple data sources here. So how does it look like? So it is a dashboard that it is going to let you interact and filter according to subscriptions, management groups, or a specific resource. You can use parameters to actually have these dynamic context instead of just having the users filtering things. You can have certain parameters that are going to be read into their configuration so that the workbook displays different or specific information. Why we say they are portable? Because you can actually save them, share them, and pin them in your Azure portal. We have a lot of workbooks going on in our GitHub community, so there you can actually also share your workbooks. You can also deploy them as templates, And the data sources that are going to be read are, for example, logs, metrics, health, Azure Resource Graph, which is also some of the things that Tom was explaining, Azure Resource Manager, and also you can have a custom endpoint, so you can actually read from that. Now, how does that look, right? So this is a workbook, just an idea. And here, what we are saying is that you can actually query data from multiple sources within Azure in a single dashboard, right? So this is kind of like what a dashboard would look like. Of course, these are canvas, and they're going to look different from every user to any user. So this is just a representation of one of the default workbooks that we have created to help our customers with their vulnerability assessment findings. So how do you build a workbook, right? So it is just as when you were in your, in your game designing classes back in university, or in some of these design classes, right? Where you have to actually define a problem that you are solving. So this could be like, I want to get a snapshot view of my resources health and what alerts are active, right? You have to actually define these problems so that you can have the idea of what you're going to create, and then identify the data sources, right? So some sources can be either in Azure Resource Graph, or they can be from the Log Analytics workspace, or they can be stored in Azure Monitor, right? For example, health, and other monitoring capabilities that Azure is going to provide you. After this, you can start building it, right? You can have this empty workbook, just empty blank space that you can actually do infinite things with it. You can start adding text, metrics, or queries for many sources, add parameters, groups, links, and others. So how does this look like is that whenever you start creating, you have these sections where you can start putting the code or the queries to retrieve information from different resources that are hosted on Azure. So in this example, I just went into edit mode and just started querying across a log analytics workspace. So here, actually, you can see how this code goes and what the result is going to look like. So yeah, let's take a look a little bit about how this is represented. And here I have this workbook that it is one of the ones that we have as default. This is the vulnerability assessment finding that we were just showing in our screen. And so I have here the overview, machines, containers that are going to have vulnerability assessment findings, and SQL servers, right? So for example, if I go into a machine, I can have certain information that I'm just querying here, which gives me like a little bit more input than the recommendations that are happening here in Security Center. I can also see categories, and also, for example, in this case, I can actually export this data so that I can have it as an Excel file. The cool thing about this is that I can always edit. So I can go into edit mode and start just changing colors, changing the information that I'm displaying here. For example, more than the resource total incidents and their severities, I also want to retrieve other types of information, right? So I will go into the edit mode into that specific category and start editing and creating more information, right? So I just had an error here, but that is because I don't have permissions into that specific workbook. Yeah, so how this works is that I have here, for example, a way to actually query things that isn't loading right now, but it happens always in live demos. But the thing is that, right? We're going to have this possibility of having this edition thing going on here into our workbooks.
That's amazing, because you see that a lot of information that Azure Security Center actually provides can be exported to, in this case, for example, a log analytics workspace, or you can directly pull the information from the Azure Resource Graph, and then you can build your own custom dashboards around that information that might be interesting for you in your environments. Now, let's bring that all together and talk a little bit about logic apps. And I know that some of you might be thinking something like, well, why use logic apps and not kind of another type of automation? Well, because logic apps are quite beneficial when it comes to protecting your environment. The nice thing here is that we are providing 3 different types of Azure Security Center triggers, which are directly built into logic apps. And with these 3 trigger types, one of which reacts on an alert, one of which reacts on the recommendations, which is basically the assessments result that I've been talking about before. And we have one for the regulatory compliance assessments. Now, all of these are fed with information that we are directly sending from Azure Security Center, and that will contain basically the same information as the REST APIs, or as what you have seen before in the portal, and also what can be exported using continuous export. Now, logic apps, as I said, can automatically be triggered from inside Security Center. They can manually be triggered from inside Security Center, and each way you're choosing will always get the same type of information. In addition to that, there are a lot of native connectors from Microsoft and to other third-party services, including Jira, ServiceNow. And if there's not a connector that is built in, you can usually use the HTTP connector. And I will show you that in the environment that I've been using, because that is something that you can use also to pull and send data to REST APIs. And that actually is how it is done. So the cool thing here is that you can use the resource ID in this case, which is a variable. And within your logic app, you can basically pull information from anywhere, put that into a variable, and then send a GET request against, in this case, the management.azure.com API, which is the Azure REST API endpoint. And using the resource ID in this case, will pull information for a particular resource type. In this case, that is a virtual machine that we're pulling information from, because we need that in order to process the whole evaluation at the end. And I will show you what I mean by that. Now, workflow automation is a capability inside Azure Security Center, and workflow automation can be referred to as an automation configuration that you are storing in a resource group that will connect a logic app that then can be automatically triggered. Let me rephrase that. So every time a Security Center alert is created, if you have a workflow automation on your subscription, then this workflow automation will trigger the configured logic app, sending all the alert information to that logic app, and then the logic app will decide what to do with that information. And how that looks in a live environment, that is what I want to show you now. So I mentioned before that earlier today, I had a successful brute force attack against my Linux victim virtual machine. So I've been using some command line tools to run a brute force attack against that machine. And eventually I've been successful. What led to an alert that has been generated from Azure Security Center. And that alert will contain some information about the IP address that has been used, the Linux victim as a virtual machine in that subscription. And if we take a look at the full alert details, then there is some more information, including my IP address that I've been using from Germany, the host that has been attacked, the accounts that have been used to attack, in this case, Tom, Ben, and Tim, and also some information, further information about the network connection. Then we have the information about take action, which is, first of all, how to mitigate the threat. Well, usually that is something like, you should inform your security operations center. In this case, you can also block the IP address and do some other things. Then also, in order to prevent future attacks, we are giving you information about open recommendation for this particular resource in order to close the loop. So again, we have that proactive approach of securing environments before actually you're creating a resource or before someone is attacking the resource, which is part of secure score recommendations and all that around. And then we have the reactive part, which is generating a security alert and giving you visibility. Then again, referencing the alert to open recommendations so you can prevent future attacks. But what we can do is we can trigger a logic app directly from that alert. And I will do that right now because there is that block brute force attack logic app that I've created, and we will take a look at that. And let me just trigger it. That's all. So that is something that your administrators can directly do from that alert. Now, the thing to notice is you would have to create your own logic apps depending on the alert type, because we can give you an information about how to do that, but we don't have a logic app for each and every type of alert because it's custom. It's something that could be fitting to your environment, but not to other customers' environments. But I just triggered that logic app, right? So let's go here. And what we see is two things. That is the logic app that has been triggered, and it has been triggered twice today. Once today at 12:11 p.m. and one at 3:11 p.m., which is exactly a minute ago. What does it mean? So this trigger here was an automated trigger based on workflow automation. So once I had attacked my virtual machine, Azure Security Center created that successful brute force attack alert, and the workflow automation has reacted on that alert and sent the alert details to my logic app. This is the trigger that I showed you before, and if you take a look at the information, the outputs that we have in here, then we have the information about the alert, which is successful SSH brute force attack against Linux victim, coming from an IP address that we will find in the extended properties. Let me just check it where it is. Well, we have it once here in the description, but also it should be part of the, no, it is part of the entities. Here we go. There is the IP address in Germany with some local information and some other extended properties and so on. So basically, we're sending all the information from the alert to the logic app. That logic app will then do some magic, because what we're doing is, first of all, we're finding out what virtual machine has been attacked. And now you can rethink to that one slide. And let me just pull that one slide up again. Here we go. So there is this slide, a GET request against management.azure.com with the resource ID. And that actually is exactly the get Azure VM part of that logic app. And now you see that resource ID, in fact, was subscriptions, the subscription ID, resource groups, the resource group name, and the provider in this case is Microsoft Compute Virtual Machines. And I'm pulling the information for this particular VM. That contains all the information that is part of, of that resource. Then after some more magic, we're pulling the information about the network interface. Again, using a REST API endpoint. In this case, it's Microsoft.network network interfaces. Then we're pulling the NSG rules for this particular network card. And at the end, what I'm doing here is I send a put request to the network card with a new rule that has, in this case, the priority 101. Why 101? Because 100 was already taken. Now, if we take a look at the manual trigger that I just sent a few minutes ago, then you will see that there has been a new rule created with a priority 102, because the logic app will count, or basically it will look for existing NSG rules starting from 100 and will then create a new deny rule at the next possible step. So you can automatically react on that type of alert. Once there is a brute force attack, that logic app can be triggered, and it will basically create a deny rule for the attacked port. No, in this case, it's even for all ports, including the attacking IP address. So the IP address is blocked from accessing the network card in the NSG directly. Now, if we take another look at the automation capabilities that we now have been covering, then we have PowerShell and Azure CLI. We have our APIs. We have logic apps. And now, what is the idea of all the automation, and when do I use what? Well, basically, PowerShell and Azure CLI are great tools if you want to have a one-time task, right? I've been using PowerShell quite a lot for even deploying resources, but that is not like having an ARM template or a Terraform template. It's more like, it's a imperative language instead of a declarative language, which is not good for DevOps and CI/CD. But still, you could use it for that. We are using it in Azure Security Center basically to pull data, to export data for one time. If you want to have a CSV record of a CSV export of a custom set of data, including secure scores and assessment results, then you can do it using Azure CLI and PowerShell. APIs are high-code interfaces that can be used inside your own applications and services, but you can also use the APIs directly in the logic apps. The nice thing with logic apps is you can, but you do not have to use code in it. So you can also use the editor that we are providing, or that the logic apps team is providing, to have like a graphical user interface to build your own workflows, and then again reference to either existing connectors or to API endpoints using the HTTP connector. In Azure Security Center, we are running an own GitHub community, and in that GitHub community, we are providing quite a lot of information about automations that you can use within the context of Security Center. Now, I've shown you that logic app, and you can find that logic app exactly here in the Azure Security Center GitHub repo in the workflow automation folder. And there is some information about it. So what will that logic app actually do? At the end, it will send out an email. That is the email template that is used. So you will also get the information directly from the alert. So again, we are taking the alert information that Security Center is sending to the logic app, and we'll use that same data in your email template to send that email out to a stakeholder, to the resource owners, or to the security contact of your subscription. And with that being said, I'm very happy that I had Fernanda with me today. And it was a great presentation. Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you, C# Corner team. And looking forward to the other sessions that are coming now in the afternoon. And if there are any questions, we're now happy to take some of them.